So I guess we can start now. My name's Kim. I'm the multimedia producer here in the Greenpeace Australia Pacific office.
And my name's Phoebe. I am a volunteer with the supporter relations team in this office as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So before we start, I just wanted to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are on right now, and they are the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I thought I'd give a little kind of introduction to what it is, because I guess everyone watching won't know what it is.
That is true.
Cool.
But it's completely new, yeah.
Yeah. So, basically the purpose of this show, Talk It Out, is to respond to and answer the challenging comments, feedback and questions that we have received here at Greenpeace over the past month.
Yeah, we don't just want to answer the easy questions as well. We want to talk about everything that people send our way and really talk through some of the challenging questions as well, I think.
Yeah, so we hope that through this kind of conversation, through this dialogue, we can all work together to make the world a safer, healthier, fairer, and more sustainable place. Because we know that we can always improve as an organisation, and the way you do that is through feedback. So we welcome it. Please do send in your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Cool, thanks.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm a volunteer with the digital engagement team here at Greenpeace Australia Pacific. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah. We're trying to sort of focus on the big issues that people have been bringing up, and obviously plastic's been in the news a lot recently, and also something that we've been talking about for ages. We had a really great effort actually, which was where I think it was volunteers went out as well and put stickers on excessively packaged fruit and vegetables, so things that didn't need to have plastic wrapped all around them. And that was kind of an effort to try and get those things unpackaged in the future, so to reduce plastic long term. But we had people that were kind of a little bit upset about that. So comments like, people saying that we were doing a good job at targeting supermarkets, but they were concerned about the type of stickers we were using, and suggesting that we might actually be adding to the problem by putting those stickers in places. So, and we've actually done a bit of research about what they were. So
yeah. I think the definition of stickers might have gotten a little confusing,
yeah.
But in the end they weren't, stickers as we all kind of think of them. They were more just cardboard. And we also know here in Australia we have very high percentages of successful cardboard recycling. So it's definitely
87%.
Yeah, 87%. It's pretty incredible. I think one of the highest in the developed world, most likely. Maybe people got the wrong idea as to what we were doing, but when it comes down to it, it was just an attempt to make very clear to Coles and Woolworths that they may have announced progress for the campaign that we were working on in looking to reduce their plastic usage, but we're really adamant in pushing the movement farther and getting them to long-term commitments that will really actually change how we do our grocery shopping, how we live our daily life, and how we can cut out single-use plastics just from the culture that we are all a part of.
Yeah, certainly. On that, we've had some people saying that we don't really need to start anywhere because the main problem lies with developing nations, and they're saying that people in Australia, we have a minuscule impact in the context of the entire world, so why are we the ones that are having to do the action in terms of environmental sustainability?
I think that when we take small efforts to heart, we're able to make larger differences because collectively there's so much more that we can do when our small actions start to add up, and they multiply rather quickly. Especially when it comes to the issue of single-use plastic, there's so many easy ways that we can avoid using single-use plastics in our own lives.
I think it's also an issue of sort of like leadership as well. I mean, we're going through all of these massive global climate conferences, and we're saying to developing nations, you need to be really careful of the energy sources that you're using, even though we obviously developed using fossil fuels and coal-powered energy sources. And so if we're saying, you guys need to clear up your act, and then we're sort of acting without any concern for our own environmental impact, and that's really, really poor leadership, and it's hardly likely to inspire anyone to sort of enact any sort of change. So I think there is a bit of a responsibility as people that have benefited from the fossil fuel age. We have to really be mindful of our own actions now and the example that we are setting. So Steve, who was one of the people that sort of raised this point about developing nations and things like that, and he was talking about his experience of the island nations, and he was saying that I think he said it was like an atrocious attitude towards the environment and a lack of respect. And I just wanted to say, I've spent some time there, and I would really dispute that. I think there's a lot of respect for nature there, given that a lot of people are primary producers. Their entire livelihoods are affected by by natural phenomena, and I think there's a lot of respect for that. And then secondly, I think we have to be almost careful of the language that we're using and the way that we look at it, because it's very easy for us to put a lot of time into thinking about these issues. We're actually very privileged that we can do so. But I think if you're facing severe impoverishment, your plastic pollution is not the first thing on your mind. And that's another reason why we're really well placed to take a big stand on this, because we do have the capacity and the space in our lives to actually think about this sort of thing. So I think that's just something to sort of keep in mind when we're talking about the difference between developed and developing nations, definitely. So moving on from that, hopefully that was, it's a bit of a downer, but it's something that you do have to talk about.
There's a lot to consider when
yeah.
talking about these environmental issues, for sure.
We also wanted to talk about plastics and alternatives. So it's kind of a positive thing. People have been really good at commenting on alternatives that they found.
Yeah, we've received so much positive feedback from people who are really willing to put out there the way that they've been able to cut back on their plastic use, whether it be simple things in their home or ways that they've just kind of adopted throughout their lifetime. So it's really inspiring to read through those comments, and we thank everyone for sharing. Even if we don't happen to mention your name here, it was so heartwarming to read everyone's suggestions, and also just like excitement towards the way that they are able to help out with the plastic issue.
Yeah, it's always, as much as we really welcome all types of feedback, and when, that makes this show to talk about sort of the tricky issues, it's always nice to hear from people that are kind of on board as well. Yeah, it's really nice. So we've had...
so Brett brought to our attention that there are alternatives for plastic, and a lot of times, like if you're talking about plastic bottles, we also have glass bottles and aluminum cans, and we do realize that both of those alternatives do come with kind of like a carbon footprint process, just to like their creation and transport, and recycling is not always a clear-cut process as well. But it's really important to recognize that one of the largest issues with plastic, especially when it's a single use and entering the environment as pollution, is that it has harmful chemicals and toxins that can enter our ecosystem, especially when it's in water. It can easily leach into those biospheres. So we definitely want to stress that, yes, glass is an alternative and it is recyclable and it doesn't have those toxins. It's rather benign in that way. So to address those kinds of comments, there are alternatives, and no alternative is perfect, but I think that we can try to get closer and inch more towards something that will be more sustainable in our environment and also make sure that no harm is done to the living creatures that are there.
Yeah, and in that sort of like plastic versus glass debate, which is something that someone brought up in our comments, what I always think about is the whole reduce, reuse, recycle. So obviously you try and not use it, so you try and reduce. But if you can't, with plastic, it's complicated in terms of reuse, because obviously you've got the chemical situation and difficult to recycle, and we don't recycle a lot of it. Yeah,
can be really, really tricky.
Yeah, exactly. And then if you've got glass, if you can't reduce the use, then you can reuse it, and it's there's no sort of health issues with that, unless you've got something gross in the bottle. I don't know.
Wash it out.
Yeah, exactly. And you can recycle. I think it was 100%. The Glass Packaging Institute. Yeah, they said 100% of glass bottles could be recycled. So.
And with much lower energy input, I believe. Yeah. So it's a significantly more sustainable alternative, even though we recognize kind of in light of those trade-offs, there's also the fact that glass is just heavier by nature. So the transport is associated with like more emissions due to like the excess weight. But again, all of these issues are kind of about trade-offs and what you're willing to sacrifice and what sacrifice can be made to make a better change.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sort of the best of a bad lot, but then
yeah. Because no solution's ever going to be perfect, and we know that, because otherwise we wouldn't have all these problems.
Yeah.
So.
Obviously, with Woolies and Coles sort of phasing out single-use plastic bags, I've read a lot of comments online of people being upset in terms of, well, firstly they say that it's what's the word? It's difficult, it's a hassle, it makes things inconvenient. That's the one, it's an inconvenience. But then also people bringing up that they use those bags with their bins and things like that. So we actually had some really great comments about alternatives in that regard. Yeah. And one of them was composter pack bin linings, which I'd never heard of before. But it comes from Pat, and he was saying he lives in a townhouse, and he composts his food, sorts plastics, recycles, so, doing all those things to sort of sensibly sort rubbish. And then he also uses composter pack bin liners, and he says they're a little bit more expensive than your average bin liner, but as he says, we all waste money on many other things, so it's like a little bit of a payment towards the environment. And that's what I kind of try and think of as well. Like when something's a little bit more expensive but it's good for the environment, I just think about how much money I waste on takeaway basically,
Coffee,
and I'm like, you know what, this is justified, yeah. And we had some other really good ones as well.
Yeah, there was so much impressive feedback just from people who really took to the cause, and they had just a great way of sharing the ways that they have been able to make these changes in their life. So we have a comment coming from John. Again, a lot of people are finding success with sorting their waste before kind of just lumping it all into one rubbish bin. So composting is definitely like a good thing to help keep your waste bin clean. And yeah, recycling is also a great way to just cut down on the volume of the rubbish itself. So yeah, John had a lot of success with just having like, you know, ditching the liner and having just a bin and putting your cleaner rubbish in there, since the food scraps and whatever else might make trash kind of icky is no longer there. So yeah, that's another way to just avoid the bin liner altogether, to just keep the trash cleaner.
Yeah, and you can have like compost, like what's the word, like worm farms.
Yeah,
remember, you know, obviously you need a
Seen those
backyard.
before.
It doesn't always work, but like it's a fun thing to try if you wanted to try it with your food scraps. Definitely.
Fun little home project.
Yeah, exactly. And we also had Angela, who, it was a nice story actually about how her mother-in-law, when she was preparing a meal, she'd always put newspaper on the bench, and then all the food scraps would go into the newspaper. When she finished preparing everything, she'd just wrap that up, and then there was no plastic bags or bin liners, the food's already contained, and that, yeah, makes it a lot easier not to have that plastic lining your bin. So
Yeah, we've done it before, so we can do it again.
Exactly,
Like before
yeah.
plastic, this is how waste would
yeah,
work.
managed
so,
to survive, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we just wanted to point out there are like a million of little things we can do, lots of little ways to change, and those are some really good ideas. I'm sure people have a lot more, so if you do have more, please send them in, and maybe we can talk about them on the next show as well.
Yeah, we love hearing your suggestions, and if anything, it's great for people reading through the comments on our Facebook and other social channels to inspire them to make their own changes. A lot of people who comment with these kinds of ideas, they make it seem they show how easy it is to actually implement them and how much it's positively changed their life. So it's definitely a source of inspiration if you're looking for that, or ideas as well.
Yeah. Definitely. So yeah, we hope that you've enjoyed the show. We really value everyone's feedback on the show as well. Like if you've got any suggestions, then
Let us
obviously,
know.
yeah. And yeah, as I said before, I mean, the show runs on your feedback, so we're always really happy to hear your concerns, your questions. Send them in, good or bad, and we'll chat about them, all of them really.
Because it's important to talk it out for both the hard things and the easy things, especially when it comes to environmental issues. There's so much that there is to discover, and there's so much that we should all just put on the table and be free to talk about it. So
Yeah, exactly. All right, so that's us for now. We will talk it out next month. All right, is that good? Okay, cool.